It is extremely important that one keep the spoons and forks separated at all times, lest they breed. Hey y'all, I'm James Wright, and welcome to my shop. I recently remodeled our kitchen, and one of the problems that we ran into is that the drawers that I wanted to put the silverware in were slightly narrower than our old one, and our silverware sorter wouldn't fit into the slot. And because it's so narrow, I didn't want to get another sorter that would fit in here because it would end up eating some on either side, and I really wanted to use as much of the width as possible in order to get all the silverware in here. So that meant I get to make my own. And I'm really happy with how this came out. It's a fairly simple system so that I can have the main silverware and utensils and other things I want in the drawer and can sort it all into one slot. Just a fairly quick project, ended up taking me about an hour and a half to make, and I figured I'd take you along for the journey and show you what it takes. To make all these dividers, I'm going to use a piece of 1/4-inch oak that I had gotten out of a piece of furniture a while ago. And it had been covered with this varnish and stain, and I wanted to get that off and get it down to raw wood. So I'm going to use a card scraper to remove all of the varnish, as that will dull up the blade of the plane fairly quickly. Then I use the plane to cut down through everything. Now this is actually originally a hand milled wood, so there's a little bit of undulation to it, and over time it has dried differently, so there's some streaks that took a little bit more to actually plane down. But it was kind of fun to work with over 100-year-old white oak. Yes, it is still white oak. After I can do that, I can joint one edge of this, and that will give me something that I can mark off of. Using a marking gauge, I can draw a line in 2 inches from the edge, and all of these dividers will be 2 inches tall, so I can draw that line and then go and cut them. On the saw bench that I made a while ago, and I have plans on this bench, I really like using this center slot. It makes things a lot easier, far more supported. Especially for thin things like this that want to bounce around a lot. It's a very, very useful thing. Now I can set up the first piece in here and mark the exact width of the drawer, and this will allow me to make a cut and know that it is going to fit nice and tight in that slot. I can chalk it up in the clamp and then cut it off. I like cutting in the clamp as opposed to on a bench hook, but if you like a bench hook, then use it. Next up, the vertical dividers, I can actually place them in, and just like with the horizontal divider, I can mark its exact measurement and then take it over to the bench and cut it off. Holding it in the vise just makes it a little bit more steady, less shaking, and it just feels a little bit better to me. Next up, I want to put slight recesses in where the vertical dividers run into the horizontal divider. I can mark out exactly the thickness of the divider so that I know I'm going to get a really nice tight fit. And here's where I do use the bench hook. I don't want to cut all the way down, I just want to cut through, and so I have to cut across the piece. So using the bench hook works fairly well for this, but I'm only cutting down about 1/8 inch on either side of the groove of the dado I want to make. So once I cut down on both sides of the dado, I can come in with a chisel and remove most of the mass. It may look like I'm using a lot of force here, but I'm being very, very delicate. I found with pushing just my hand, I bounced around a little bit more than I wanted to, so using the mallet made it a little bit more controllable. Once I cut those grooves, then I can cut separators that will go near the handle end of the drawer. And I want these to be exactly the same as the space in between the grooves I just cut. So I can use a marking knife and lay those out. And here you can see how they fit into the base in between those so that I can keep them all parallel. And the last one here was a little bit too long. Oops, oh well, I just have to shave it down a little bit and we can get back to work. So to shave it down, I'm just using a block plane and cutting in about 2/3 of the way across. I don't want to blow out the other side, I just want to cut in a little ways. Then come around from the other side and I can clean that out and get a really nice clean edge all the way across. Now for the dividers, I couldn't quite get my fingers in between them, they were too close together, so I wanted to cut out a notch in all 3 of the dividers so that I could easily reach in between them. So for this, I'm going to bore a hole through all 3 of them at the same point, and then cut down at 45 degrees on either side. I'm just chalking them up at a slight angle. Actually, they're straight across, and I'm bending the saw at an angle, and with a little bit of work, it cuts just as easily as well, as cutting a straight line. It's really not that difficult. Then to clean up the bottom, I just use a couple rasps, make them finer and finer until I get a really nice smooth curve at the bottom. And I like how those came out. Now for the assembly. The only pieces that get glue are the 4 pieces that are clamped to the side that separate the horizontal dividers. Everything else is just squeezed into place. And I like the friction fit. It was kind of nice because if I do ever get a lot of dirt in the bottom of this and I want to clean it up, all of these pieces can be pulled out and cleaned and then put back in. And so I have the convenience of a tray that can come out with not taking up all the space of having a tray in there. So everything is just friction and tight fit, and the silverware fits. I'm happy. Now for the finish. Now I know a lot of people here are going to start screaming, "Oh no, he's using boiled linseed oil. That's not food safe." And I have to say, yes, it is food safe because I made it myself. It's made from pure raw linseed oil, and if I wanted to, I could drink it. And the linseed oil is a fantastic finish for this, really brings out the white oak, and I am very, very happy with how this came out. And more importantly, my wife is happy. And now our silverware has a place to go. So there you have it. A fairly simple process, a great little project that I can now make a silverware drawer exactly the way I want it. And I'm sure that if you made one for your shop or your kitchen, it would look a lot different. And I think I might do something fairly similar in the future for like a screw sorter in the shop or something of that nature. I don't know. Keep an eye open for that video. It might be coming. But yeah, that was about it. It was a great little project and one I'm looking forward to using, and I think my wife will be happy now that she can actually sort her silverware in the drawer. I do want to say thank you to the patrons on Patreon. You guys really are the reason why I can keep putting out content like this. If you'd like to help out with that or find out more, you can do so right down here. Also, if you'd like to subscribe or see some behind the scenes footage, you can do that as well. That's about it for today. And until next time, have a wonderful day.